But when it is a matter of life and death, you cannot afford to do it afraid. Because fear can kill you before your prefrontal cortex has time to kick in.
Well, why don't you just do it afraid?
Because the saying, feel the fear and do it anyway, it's true.
Some brilliant, well-meaning people will tell you to do it afraid. They ask you to let the fear be there, but execute anyway. They urge you to channel the energy of the fear towards the required action. There is a place for this approach, even when the stakes seem high. Public speaking in front of a large crowd, asking for the promotion, quitting your job to start a business. You have a lot to gain by pushing through the fear to do the thing. Ask for the raise anyway. You just might get it. Ask the person you admire out on a date. They just might say yes. In most cases, this mindset will serve you well. You see, in our day-to-day lives, if a false alarm of danger triggers our fear, it's okay. Eventually, our prefrontal cortex kicks in and we realize that we are not in danger. But when it is a matter of life and death, you cannot afford to do it afraid. Because fear can kill you before your prefrontal cortex has time to kick in. You must learn in those cases to overcome the fear itself. Deep water falls into this life or death category. Now, for the record, we define deep water as any water that is above your head. So, if you're 5 foot 2 inches tall, water that is 5 foot 4 inches is deep water for you. That same depth of water would not be deep water for someone who is 6 feet tall. When you are immersed in deep water, your thalamus alerts amygdala that this is a situation where you might not be able to breathe. Your amygdala then forwards this tip quickly to hypothalamus, who in turn triggers the FFF, fight, flight, freeze response. The problem with fighting, fleeing, or freezing in deep water are as follows. The first is access to air. Your body gears up to fill your lungs with air for that fight or flight or freeze. But there isn't air. You are in water above your head. If you take a breath, water will rush into your lungs. Inhaling water into your lungs is one of the initial steps to drowning. Now let's look at your fight or flight response from a physical perspective. The automatic way your body knows how to take flight is via running. You see, the running motion is inefficient in water. So also is the fighting motion. The thrashing motion of someone who is terrified and freaking out in water is inefficient. It doesn't get them breath and it doesn't get them to safety. Now let's look at flight from an attention perspective. If you take flight by escaping your body, that is, if you black out, then you are not available to keep your nostrils closed. The water gets into your lung through your nostrils and you begin to drown. Let's look at freeze. Immobilization while immersed in water is counterproductive. Immobilization just means you're doing nothing. You're frozen in place. You will eventually run out of air and shortly begin to drown. So as you see, the problem with the FFF, fight, flight, and freeze response in deep water is that it can drown you. The brain working the way it should with a false alarm could kill you in deep water.
Jordan, I'm gonna push you.
This is the moment Taylor pushed Jordan Holgerson off the bridge in Washington State last August.
Ready?
Jordan plunged 60 feet into the water, landing chest first. She suffered 6 broken ribs and punctured lungs. At the sentencing, Taylor said she was sorry.
I'd like to sincerely apologize to Jordan Holgerson, her family, and friends for the pain and humiliation I had caused by my mindless action that occurred last summer.
Then, off she went to jail for 2 days. Jordan says she's ready to move on.
I think it's probably just as emotional for her as me.
Now let's say you feel afraid in deep water, but you decide to continue, to push through that initial desire to fight, flee, or freeze. What happens in that case? Well, the prefrontal cortex detectives of your brain are now on deck with their investigation. They check out the water. Yes, it's deep. Your feet can't touch the ground. They check out your beliefs. Nope. You don't believe that you can float. Okay. So now sensory cortex and hippocampus compare notes about the information from your senses and your history and can't find any evidence why you should not be afraid. So they shoot off their recommendation to amygdala. And they tell him this: you're unsafe. That your initial fear, fight, flight, freeze response was valid. So amygdala reinforces the initial message to hypothalamus. Continue the FFF response. So you see, if you believe that you don't float, but you still decide to push through scenario 1, panic eventually sets in. Your body continues to attempt to fight, to flee, or freeze. You're in full panic and you drown. Or scenario 2, you survive the experience, but it is recorded in the annals of your memories that you had cause to be afraid while you were in deep water. These are records that hippocampus, in her infinite wisdom, will pull up the next time you're in water. You just provided your brain with another piece of evidence that deep water is unsafe and is a place where the fight, flight, freeze FFF response should be triggered. You have just reinforced your brain's fear mechanism. So either you drown, you die, or your brain now even more strongly believes that deep water is a place to be afraid. It is for this reason that you should never, ever push anybody into deep water. Not in jest, not to flirt, not to teach them to swim.
I can't swim.
You can't what?
I can't swim.
How old are you?
6. Help him, he can't swim.
Finally learned. Everybody should swim. Just reach out in front of you and grab a handful of water. Pull it back towards you. Not too fast. That's the way I learned.
Don't do it. It does more harm than good. It is also for this reason that you should learn to address your fear of deep water before you jump into it. We help you address your fear of deep water with our 5 firm foundations for freedom from fear. Click the link to join our summer 2023 semester. There's currently a discount ongoing that will end once we begin the course on May 1st. I know you may not feel fearless now, but hang with me and we'll get there together.